All right, so now we're doing the scoring for the free response. So here are our scoring guidelines for question number 5. We have the questions restated. And now we're going to look at the solution that we gave to that and see where the points are coming in. So it looks like our part A, where we just said where the bird was gaining weight most rapidly, that's worth 2 points. We get 1 point for using dBdt and 1 point for giving an answer with a reason. So, uses dBdt. Well, we took our 40 and our 70 and we plugged them into dBdt, so we got that point for using dBdt. It's not entirely clear what that means, uses dBdt. So I guess I could have used it for anything. So I used it by plugging in the 40 and the 70, so I used it. And then our other point is answer with reason. So we need to get the answer right and have the reason correct in order to have that right. Now, what they've given as a solution, they have their dBdt at b equals 40. This is a nice way that they've written that, is 12. They didn't even put units on. And at 70 is 6 grams per day. And they say, here's the key of this. Because dBdt is greater than dBdt at 70, dBdt at 40 is greater than dBdt at 70, the bird is gaining weight faster when it weighs 40 grams. So we said, because 12 is greater than 6, so we just put the numbers in, they put the derivatives evaluated at the point, but we've clearly indicated where those are coming from, so that's fine. The bird is gaining weight faster when it weighs 40 grams, the bird is gaining weight more rapidly when it weighs 40 grams. So we've got both the answer and the reason. So it looks like we've got 2 points on part A, and then we'll look at part B. So for part B is where we were asked to find the second derivative. Part B was also worth 2 points. So we got 2 points for putting our d squared b dt squared in terms of b. So they did very much exactly what we did. They said d squared b dt squared equals negative 1/5 db dt, and that equals negative 1/5. We can follow along. This looks like we've written exactly what they wrote for an answer. That's nice to see. And that equals negative 1/25 times 100 minus b. So we have found d squared b dt squared in terms of b. We found that right there. So that's that point. And then our explanation, it says, therefore the graph of b is concave down for 20 less than or equal to b is less than 100. Now I just said it's always concave down. I probably can get away with that because the domain of the problem is from 20 to 100 because the bird is born weighing 20 grams and its adult weight is 100 grams. But this is probably a little bit nicer to actually state the domain of the problem. Probably would get the point because the key word here is it's concave down. I said always, they said on its particular domain. A portion of the given graph is concave up. So we had to say what the contradiction was. A portion of the given graph is concave up. I said, but the given graph has sections that are concave up. So I said sections, they said a portion, and that's a valid explanation. So that's our explanation point. So we got 2 points there. Now, the very unusual part C, what's unusual about it is that there's 5 points for a single part. That's quite a lot of points to be on one part of the problem. So part C is worth 5 points. And that's more than half of the problem. So, well, let's see if we got all the parts. So separation of variables. So separation of variables means if all we wrote was this, then we would get 1 point if that's all we did. So that's 1 point for separating the variables. Antiderivatives means so here's their separation of variables. Well, here's where they are separated. And then they did the integral right away. Then they got negative ln 100 minus b, absolute value, they have the absolute value there, of 100 minus b equals 1/5 t plus c. That's what we have right here. So that's our antiderivatives. So that's our antiderivative points. Constant of integration. Notice that you get a point just for putting the plus c there. So we actually have 2 points on this line. One for the constant of integration and one for the integrals. So that's really 2 points for getting that. But notice, if I had done nothing here but write plus c, I would have gotten a point for that. I've written a lot of nonsense and somewhere put plus c, and I put a constant of integration, so I get a point. Uses initial condition. So Oh, and they, by the way, they note this, that because b is less than 100, what absolute value of 100 minus b is equal to 100 minus b. That's why we're able to make this change right here. Then here's where they plug in the 20 and the 0, and that's our b of 0 equals 20, t equals 0, b equals 20. So we see that right here, negative ln 100 minus 20, that matches there, equals 1/5 times 0 plus c. So that's where we used the initial condition. So notice, we plugged in the 0 and the 20. Even if we had gone on to get the c wrong, the fact that we used the initial condition, and presumably by plugging in the b equals 20 and the t equals 0, the fact that I used it already gets me the point. And then the last bit is to solve for b. So they got to here, 100 minus b equals 80 e to the negative t over 5. And their final solution, b of t equals 100 minus 80 e to the negative t over 5. Well, I put the negative 80 e to the negative 1/5 t first. Let's see if we can get this way. Here's their solution. 100, there's my 100, minus 80 e to the negative t over 5, minus 80 e to the negative 1/5 t is the same as negative t over 5. And they said, by the way, and t has to be greater than or equal to 0 because we're not weighing the bird before it's born. So that is our 5th point. Here's some interesting notes that they have about the scoring. If there's no constant of integration, if we don't put the plus c, then I get maximum 2 points. I can't get, so they're saying that if I don't have the constant of integration, then I also don't get to get a point for using the initial condition, and I don't get a point for solving for b, no matter what else I did. So if I don't put that plus c, I automatically lose all these last 3 points. And it also says, if I don't separate the variables in the first place, then I can't get any points. So it's not true what I said before, that for the constant of integration, if I just put a plus c somewhere, I automatically get the points. Because if I didn't at least separate the variables, then it says I don't get any points. So these two notes are an important thing to notice in terms of how they grade these tests, because sometimes they will have these statements that if we don't do one thing, I lose a bunch of points. If I don't separate the variables, I can't get any points. So there are some of the operations in here, even though we have a lot of different points all separated out, some of the steps are deal breakers. So if I didn't do that separation of variables, it's a deal breaker. I lost the whole question. If I didn't do that constant of integration, I lost more than half of that question automatically. So be careful for those kind of things. And again, you don't know ahead of time what this breakdown is, so you just want to do everything as carefully as possible. But it helps to know what they're keeping in mind when they're scoring it. So that is our question number 5.